Okay, so um, what's happened to me these past few weeks is I got into an art residency and I've had to make a little trek. It's about like 3 hours, an hour and a half one way to get on Manhattan, go all the way downtown to Fulton Street, and then change the World Trade Center, go to the PATH train, and then get off at General Square, and then walk down this whole industrial area. But eventually I get to the place. So it takes a little time, but I know the place is there, and I just got to keep moving forward. So what I wanted to share on today is it's on faith. And to me, as an artist, over the years, where I take it all in, is it's God's promises in life that bring his creative reality and imagination into my life. And it transforms us onto our living now and into eternity that we enter. It's all the way through. And there's two people I'm going to touch on. One is Shephthah, and the other is Jehoshaphat, which I never really looked at before. But they're two people who were great observers of life. And that's a big thing in faith, is we have to be able to see, not just see physically, but see internally, and to observe everything that's around us. They stepped into the opportunities that were before them and the situations, and they were able to change not only their reality, but other people's lives because of them being able to see more than other people would see. And in Hebrews chapter 11, in verses 1 to 2, and this is the Message version, which is where I got the title of this from. It says the fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. It's our handle on what we can't see. And I thought that, again, before anything ever manifests itself outside of us, it has to be internally. It has to be in our mind, in our heart, and come out in what we say. When those three things are all involved, and faith is behind it, it brings out the invisible. I think that God's creative thoughts and everything I think, that I believe in, that I dream in, that I act on, it's my trust in that creative force to move all the variables and things around me that I can't see. It's the invisible God engaging in the unseen world around me and making it, as I decide to step out to move in those situations at that time and at that place when I'm aligned and I'm ready to go with him. There's three things that I looked at. This is probably because of me going to a Presbyterian church so many years. There's three things. Our existence depends on a foundation of faith, like it did for these people in Hebrews 11. The factor that makes life worth living is faith. And our grip on the variables and the situations that are in the physical world that are hidden behind it. It activates all that. I still love to read, and I remember reading this, I think, when I was like 16 years old, E.W. Bullinger's definition of faith, which is the living, divinely implanted principle. It's the core of life behind everything. In Hebrews 11, 13, 14, in the Message, it says, each one of these people died, not yet having in hand what was promised, but still believing. How did they do it? They saw it way off in the distance, waved their greeting, and accepted the fact that they were then transients in this world. And I love that it says they saw it again. Well, they didn't see it physically, they had to see it internally and believe what God was saying. But they waved their greeting. It's like, I see you, hey there. I just like that. They waved their greeting. Um, they observed with keen eyes, like I said again, not just the physical, but that internal. And they got it. They really got it. They were transient, which means it lasts only a short time, it exists briefly. And I always think that I may not experience everything in this life. And I know so many of us, so many people, they want to grab a hold of life. They want to experience it all of life. And it's good to know that, you know what, I don't have to experience everything. But like these people and like Jehoshaphat and Jephthah, I can wave my greeting. I can see it far ahead and know where I'm going. In Hebrews 12, it says, keep your eyes, again, keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it. So again, it's all these very simple factors to observe, to look, to take in. And it says, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. And that's what we have to do, because there's so many distractions that are all around us. And one of the hardest things to do is to focus. I know when I was taking performance classes and acting, you have to block out everything around you. Because if you start thinking about the people and start looking at them and you lose the focus of the message of what you're trying to do, you lose it. And you have to have that intent focus on what you're doing and what your task is. In Proverbs 29:18, it says that if people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. And that's why it's so important for us to have faith, that we're not stumbling all over ourselves, trying to figure everything out ourselves. We need a new pair of eyes to see ourselves in, as Eric and I know from the book club we're taking with Sue, it's our true identity. We have to see with the new pair of eyes, our true identity. And faith gives us that clarity, and it gives us a focus that we could never have without it. It sharpens the focus, just like if you're looking at something and it's a little blurry and you start fine tuning it. There it is. It just fine tunes that for us. I want to talk about Jephthah first, or Jephthah. And he proved what he did was he was not defined by what other people said about him, family, friends, or even where he came from. His name means he will deliver. So that was pretty cool. And when you read about his background, it's a pretty poor background. Keep in mind what Judges 21:25 says. And I always like to read this. It says that at that time, there was no king in Israel. People did whatever they felt like doing. So what happened is, what does it say? It says they did. They did it over and over again, whatever they felt, whatever they wanted to do. It was a practice and a lifestyle. And if we look at the history of Israel after this, all the evil that followed, all the things that fell apart, they happened because of them practicing to do exactly just what they wanted to do. And it's very relevant today, because we're having so many problems in the world and in our country because people are doing exactly what they feel like doing without thinking of the consequences to other people, without caring about other people, without trusting God and that existence, that foundation. So same thing happening, same old, nothing new. But let's look at Judges chapter 11. We're going to read a little bit about Jephthah. And I didn't really read that much about his background. I knew about his daughter and about him giving her over, as a living sacrifice, but committing her to God without ever getting married. But I never really read much about him. And it says in Judges 11, now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, or as it says in the Message version, he was a tough warrior. And he was the son of an harlot. And Gilead begat Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bare him sons. And his wife's sons grew up, and they thrust out Jephthah, or they literally threw him out physically. And they said unto him, thou shalt not inherit in our father's house, for thou art the son of a strange woman, or of a whore. Then Jephthah fled from his brethren and dwelt in the land of Tob, or Tob. And there were gathered vain men to Jephthah, and we'll get into what these vain men were, and went out with him. And it came to pass in the process of time, and I like that again because everything changes with time. In the process of time, you hold on and you endure. That the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah out of the land of Tob. And they said unto Jephthah, come and be our captain, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, he was no fool, here was his opportunity, here was the moment. We get these divine appointments, we get these opportunities, and we can choose to act on it or not. And Jephthah was right there. He said, did not ye hate me and expel me out of my father's house? And why are you come unto me now when you are in distress? I like that. And the elders of Gilead said unto Jephthah, therefore we turn again to thee now, that thou mayest go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. No sorry, no apology, nothing addressing what happened. Oh, we need you, and you can come with us and you can help us. And Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, if ye bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and the Lord deliver them before me, shall I be your head? He went right for it. I really like reading about Jephthah. He's not defined again by what other people say about him, even his family. When it says they threw him out, there was a physical rejection, there was a mental, there was an emotional. It was all there, targeted at him with that force, all focused on him. But it said that Jephthah, he just went forward. He kept going. The word that says for the vain people is scoundrels, scoundrels and the riffraff. So his family rejected him, but the riffraff all came to him. And these guys, they were his buddies. He hung out with them. They ate together, they drank together, they hung out. And Jephthah, he was a judge for 6 years that he ruled Israel. And he was considered, and I looked this up, he was considered an outlaw king, an outlaw prince with those gang of scoundrels and riffraff. His father was Gilead and his mother was a prostitute. That's who he was. And especially in those days, your background and who you are meant a lot. He was also not afraid to engage with his people and to engage with his adversaries. If you look in verse 29, ooh, what was that? In verse 29, it says, then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead, he passed over onto the children of Ammon. So the Spirit of God came in him, and it just kind of reminds me of my trip, getting on the train at 207th Street, and getting off at Fulton, then going underground to the World Trade Center, then getting the PATH train, and getting off in Jersey City. He was going through all these places, but he knew what he had to do. And I think that Spirit of God in him energized him, and it kept him going. It just kept him moving. But he engaged to go through all the places, but he still kept his vision on the goal. Despite the people, despite traveling all the lands, he kept going. And the word spirit, and a lot of us have probably heard about this before, but it's ruach, and it's used 389 times in the Old Testament. The root idea through all the passages is it's that invisible force, except by its manifestation. And these are seen externally to man as well as internally within man. As coming from God, it's the invisible origin of life. And everything else apart from that is death. That's a great definition, I thought, from Bollinger on that. So what faith does is it activates that invisible spirit within us, that we can see it. We can see the works and what happens on the outside in the manifestation. He was forcibly thrown out. Very hard words, very demeaning. And keep in mind that he was a strong warrior. He was a mighty warrior. And here they were belittling him in the worst way that they could. His family turned against him, but the riffraff clung to him. And the elders of Israel, they didn't go to his brothers. He had other brothers, he had family. They went to him, which says a lot. They sought him out. And he took that moment that he got and everything that he could from it. And I think that we have those divine appointments, we have those times and opportunities in our life. And as long as we're alive, they keep coming. But it's up to us to be able to see it. Again, observing, seeing. We have to be aware of what is happening around us and to have that Spirit of God in us to listen. You know, it works hand in hand. The other person I want to look at is Jehoshaphat. And she was the half sister of Ahaziah. He was the king of Judah. He was the son of Jehoram and Athaliah. And as we'll read, Athaliah was grandmother from hell. Probably the worst grandmother in history we'll read about. She was the daughter of King Ahab of Israel. Okay. Jehoshaphat, she was the wife of the high priest Jehoiada. So Ahaziah, who was now the son of Athaliah, okay, he was killed. So Athaliah, she wanted to take over the throne, but there was a slight problem. She had all her grandsons before her. So she had to get rid of all her grandsons in order for her to rule. And apparently she didn't have much of a problem with that. So we're going to look at 2 Kings chapter 11. And 2 Kings chapter 11, let's see here. I'm going to read from verse 1. It says, and when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed royal. But Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons, which was slain. So think about that. It had to be pretty bloody. There were all these other boys that were murdered, that were killed. And it says that she went in there to find Joash. And that took a lot of guts and a lot of courage to do that. also to go against the will of Athaliah, who could put her to death. Okay. And she hid him, even him and his nurse, in the bedchamber from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. And he was with her, hid in the house of the Lord 6 years. And Athaliah did reign over the land. So we could just imagine what kind of a ruler she was. And the 7th year, Jehoiada sent and fetched the rulers, and that's the high priest, that's the husband of Jehoshaphat, fetched the rulers over hundreds with the captains and the guard, and brought them to him into the house of the Lord, and made a covenant with them, and took an oath of them in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. So apparently they all thought the king's sons were all dead. But Jehoiada took them in and they made a covenant. We know how firm a covenant is when you make that. And in verse 5, he commanded them, saying, "This is the thing that ye shall do." Again, that conviction and that force. "A third part of you that enter in on the Sabbath shall even be keepers of the watch of the king's house. And a third part shall be at the gate of Ser, and a third part at the gate behind the guard. So shall ye keep the watch of the house, that it be not broken down. And 2 parts of all you that go forth on the Sabbath, even they shall keep the watch of the house of the Lord about the king. And ye shall compass the king round about," that's this little boy, "every man with his weapons in his hand. And he that cometh within the ranges, let him be slain. And be ye with the king as he goeth out and as he cometh in." Okay. So Jehoshaphat, again, she had to go among all these dead boys. So, I mean, emotionally and mentally, what was that like to see all her nephews like that? But she was focused. She had a vision. She had to save Joash. And for 6 years, not just her nephew's life, her husband's life, every single day, it could come crashing down with Athaliah finding out where he was. And they stood those 6 years focused on that vision and focused on what they needed to do to keep that line of David alive. She had to believe that what she was doing was right. And she hid him in the bedchambers where they stored all the bedding. That's where it was. Okay. If we look at the end, what happens is Athaliah gets killed. She's put out of the way, and Joash becomes king. And it says in chapter 12 that in the 7th year of Jehoash began to reign, and 40 years reigned he in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. And Jehoash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. So the high priest, the husband of Jehoshaphat, is instructing him. Now, it doesn't say it in here, but I would think that Jehoshaphat was a powerful influence on Joash's life too, that she was there. He had these godly people that were helping him so that he could become a good king. So Jehoiada instructed him, but again, it's Jehoshaphat that you got to believe was there also helping him too. It took great courage on her part to step out in faith and do what she needed to do. If she did what she just felt like doing, like a lot of Israel was doing, I don't think she ever would have done that. That never would have happened. But it was faith and it was love that motivated her to move forward. And when we have faith and we have love behind us, they're powerful forces to stand up against any enemy. While with Athala, it was greed and power that motivated her. That was her motivation. And we saw it eventually got her. So when I look at all this, what's the conclusion? What am I thinking about? I'm thinking again, our existence depends on the foundation of faith. For Jephthah, it meant seeing who he was beyond the family, beyond the city's perception of him, and beyond his background as the son of a whore. It meant confrontation to those who thought he was worth very little, bonding with the riffraff that really taught him what friendship was, confronting his enemies, seeing himself as a leader of his people and nothing less than that, facing his enemies ferociously because he had that spirit in him that gave him that path for endurance, for stamina, for vision, to do what God set before him. He was able to be motivated and do that. For Jehoshaphat, it was putting her nephew before her own life under the penalty of death. And for 6 years, just not knowing where her life was going to go, what was going to happen. It was seeing God's vision and purpose in her life and protecting David's line despite all the cost to her own family and her own house. She was a powerful influence on his life, on Joash, that changed not just her life, it changed the course of so many other people in Israel because of what she did to save this one life. Both of them got, through faith, a purpose and a meaning beyond their own desires, beyond their own finite lives. Trusting in God and his power to move the variables, to move the things that they were not able to control. Because again, what they say in Hebrews, they saw him who was invisible. And him that's invisible could engage in the unseen world that they couldn't see and they couldn't control. What is the parallel to us? Again, it's very similar, but it goes even a step further for us. It means that we are sealed with that Spirit of God, with a new identity, new characteristics that allows us to raise the bar to everything that we have in our life. It's to have an infinite vision in a finite world that tries to confine us and keep us limited. It sets that before our life that we can, I just think of, I'm waving my greeting. I'm waving my greeting to God and to his heavenly host that will one day surround us and surround Jephthah and Jehoshaphat and all of us. And I just picture that cheer and that welcome resounding louder than any cheers at Shea Stadium or the Super Bowl could do, because faith will take us through every situation and every avenue that we go through if we hold on to that vision, if we keep it inside us. So that's faith.